Welcome to Beyond Sunday, where we have a cup of coffee, a conversation, and cultivate our relationships with one another in Christ. Beyond Sunday is a podcast ministry of Kindred Church, broadcasting to you from beautiful Orange County, California. And now, here's your host, Tom Grossi.
Well, hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Beyond Sunday, where we have a cup of coffee and a conversation with members of our worship and music ministry team here at Kindred Community Church. I'm your host for Beyond Sunday, Tom Grossi, and minister of music here at Kindred. And it's my joy to welcome my next guest for this episode. And it reminds me of this quote. He reminds me of this quote from William Arthur Ward, who's an author and award-winning scholar. William Arthur Ward said this, quote, "The mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, but the great teacher inspires." So we have the joy of having a retired history teacher with us, better known as the Dave Shelton, joining us on Beyond Sunday. Dave, it's good to have you with us.
Good to be here.
Now, Dave, what category of all of those do you think you fit in? I know that I think you're in the inspiring category.
Well, you'd need to ask my former students. I have taught Beth DeCourcy,
Wow.
the McAllister children,
Wow.
the Samsvik children,
Wow.
and Aaron Boone, the manager of the New York Yankees. So,
Okay, folks, he's there at the he's at the last at the list. He's the inspiring teacher.
Yeah, I'll take that.
You'll take it. Well, before I want to get right back into that again, Dave, because I want to talk about that's something that maybe some people that are new to Kindred don't even know is your teaching background. But first, Dave, it's a joy to have you with us, and just wanted you to tell us a little bit about you and Kathy and how long you've been at Kindred. I know you're kind of the charter member at Kindred, and for many people who are at Kindred, and including myself, who's been here for 6 years, every time I'm with you, I seem to learn something new about Kindred folklore. And maybe tell us a little bit about you and Kathy and how you all started at Kindred and over at the Elks Lodge and playing bass guitar every Sunday and faithfully playing bass with us to this day. Just sort of wrap all that up and tell us a little bit about kind of the early days a little bit of Kindred, but maybe go back before that. Tell us maybe a little bit about how you and Kathy met and all of that. It would be great for us to know.
All right, well, my wife is Kathy. On July 1st, this is being filmed as tomorrow, it will be our 43rd anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So they said it wouldn't last.
43 years. Yeah. She hasn't figured it out yet, huh?
But she just retired, so she may get to figure it out really soon. So we've we met in it's kind of weird circumstances, odd. I mean, people meet in all kinds of circumstances. So I was working at a camper manufacturing plant while I was in college, and she was working at a fast food place. And sometimes during lunch, we'd skip out and go get lunch there at the fast food place. And I noticed Kathy, cute little blonde girl, and so weeks later, my friend and I are in there. We were janitors to begin with. We just cleaned up. We came in after our classes and cleaned up things. We're there cleaning up the office, and we saw Kathy come walking in, and I said, "Hey, that's the Wimpy's girl," because she worked at Wimpy's, which made submarine sandwiches. And she ended up getting a job there. Well, I used to pester her at California Campers, and then years later, when I was playing music, I invited her. I happened to call up her mom's house, and she didn't even live there anymore, but she happened to be there. So I invited her to come to one of our gigs, and then over time I asked her out on a real date, and
a real date.
That happened over a period of time, and then 1978 we got married.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't have any children. We have 2 tortoises. That's it. They may outlive us. You have to put them in your will because they're very long-lived. So,
wow. You know, it's spoken as a true musician, Dave, for you to have the wisdom and foresight and ability at a young age to be able to know that when you take this girl that you're interested in, to take her out on a real date as opposed to a gig. Good on you there.
Yeah.
Because us musicians tend to sometimes conflate a gig and a date all at once, right? And that usually doesn't go over too well.
No, we don't spend much time with them.
Yeah.
So we're it's like asking somebody to come watch you work.
To watch you work, right.
Yeah. So, no, that's not a real date.
That's a good deal. So fast forward into that brings you to Kindred. So I know you were a part of the original kind of the father church, if you will, of Kindred before Kindred even became Kindred. Maybe tell folks, especially who are new to Kindred, just a little bit about that journey and you all being here at Kindred.
Well, it goes back to my teaching career, and I was a softball coach as well, and we were already going to Calvary Church, and we were in an adult Bible class, but it wasn't really doing it for us. And my manager, who was Dana Obrimsky, said, well, if you don't like it, you should come to my dad's class at Calvary. And so I said, okay, what room is it in? So the next Sunday, she greets us at the door and brings us in, and we really liked it. And this was in one of the upper rooms by the gymnasium at Calvary Church. The class got so big that they moved to Samsvik Chapel, and while attending there, the music was generally just a solo artist. Sometimes it was Lou Hager. Sometimes it was Mike Sorrell from the Altar Boys. Sometimes it was Dave Garrett. Well, Dave Garrett played a lot. He played piano and guitar, and he played and accompanied himself a lot. And so one time after sitting there, I just went up to him. I said, do you ever need a bass player to play along with you? And he said, oh, well, that would be...
You're like, one?
That would be great. And it got to the point where I just showed up with a bass every Sunday at Samsvik Chapel, and it didn't matter who was leading. They just had the charts there, and we would run through them and do a sound check. So I was kind of like the house bassist. I wasn't really sure who would be leading, but I was relatively sure they were going to need a bass player.
What years approximately was that?
I don't know when that was. That was I should have studied. That was a long time ago. So, so it had to be in the 80s. Yeah, and maybe the late 80s. And then it became a little more formalized in terms of the group of musicians, adding a drummer, Lou and Dave playing together, and it kind of broke off into another church rather than a class. The class had gotten really large. It was time that Chuck wanted to move into his own ministry rather than just being a Sunday school class and having a church ministry. He was also the chaplain of the Angels and the Rams at the time, so he had a teaching gift. So we moved to the Elks Club, which it was kind of odd, having a disco ball and stuffed animal heads around, but it was it met our needs, and everybody it was nice that everybody had a job to do because it wasn't set up as a church. So people came and made coffee, people came and set up the chairs, people came and arranged, all the sound equipment needed to be set up every Sunday. So it was a very involved congregation. We eventually then moved to the Garden Church, which is what Kindred is now, and then went through a whole series of worship leaders. Dave led for a while, Tim Onan, Sylvia Cotton. We just, as a whole, and then Christian Ebner, who was there for the longest period of time, and then that brought us to Tom Grossi.
To the bald guy.
And so I've been,
all been downhill from there.
I'm like the last man standing, because the only one that ever plays at a church or a men's retreat setting or anything is Lou Hager. So, Lou and I are kind of the last of that original crew that were leading or participating in worship.
He just, there's something about him and his personality and his spirit, and he's a blast.
Yeah, and he's
special man.
He is a very special person.
Yeah, as are you, and Kathy both.
Yeah.
Well, that's neat to hear, as well as to to have your experience, Dave, and your life experience, but also to have your kind of wisdom and knowledge on the platform. I know for me, I value it greatly. I value our friendship, and your musicianship I respect greatly. And I think that, there's such a trend in a lot of modern evangelical churches, and I know we've talked about this many times before, where, gray hair in the pulpit is fairly acceptable and fairly common knowledge, but gray hair in the band, oftentimes you don't see much, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I think it's and now that I'm not just the young whippersnapper anymore, I'm 51 years old. So for a worship leader, 51-year-old worship leader is kind of an old guy in this business. So I'm kind of feeling like even more so that I'm grateful for a church that not only honors and respects but values people of all ages and stages. In a past episode, we had Phoebe Robb sitting in that chair, and here she's just starting her life and leading in worship and just starting her career, and she's a college student. And here you're my guest here today, and that's what I love most about my job, to be honest, is that I have this wide variety of generational gap that we come together and worship God and use our instruments and use our talents to glorify Him and learn from each other and grow from each other. So I love that about you, and I love that about our church. And so I think you would give an amen to that.
Well, yeah, and I love that too. That the young people, the younger people, which is almost everybody on the stage. For me, they're all younger than I. They inspire you. They bring an energy, a different perspective. We've got so many of them. And they're very accepting. It's like, as a musical community, age really didn't matter to them. We're just all contributing. We're doing what we can, and to make a worship set mean something, so that it works together. So yeah, age is hardly a consideration, and I feel I relate well. It's probably from my teaching career. I feel I relate well to the younger ones.
Definitely.
And it's just great to have them there rather than have a bunch of 50-somethings on stage, because I'm not sure that would be embraced by the way our church is growing. So
that's great. I love it. It's gracious, and it's a perfect segue actually for talking a little bit about your teaching career. So many people know that you're a retired high school teacher, Villa Park for all of those years. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes.
Wow. And how many years did you teach?
35 at Villa Park. 34 and change.
Wow.
I did start in education a little bit earlier. Once you got your credential, it was a terrible time. I think it was 1974 and 1975, and nobody was hiring teachers then. It was a terrible time to be a new teacher looking for a job. And so one of my first jobs in education was at the court schools, which there's a bunch of them around Orange County, and the one that I spent the most time at was Otto Fisher High School, where and that's the school at Juvenile Hall, right over by the Block City Shopping Center. So I spent a while in there. It wasn't really teaching. They needed a credentialed person because it is a high school and people actually graduate from it. But then I was glad to get the interviews at Villa Park High School, and I was there my whole teaching career.
Wow. And in that first experience, there's some high-risk kind of students that is involved in that kind of environment. That was probably a bit of trial by fire with you a little bit, huh?
You had to count the pencils because of sharpened objects, you know.
Wow.
There was all kind. It was, and you were locked in the room just like the kids were. You could call for a counselor as like a panic button or anything. I never had a bad experience with anything, but there was a reason for all of that stuff.
I bet the stories, if the walls of the Shelton household could speak, right, of the stories that you could tell of what it was like to teach through those decades, like it seems to be that there's challenges every year in teaching, but
every period, every hour, there's a different challenge. So
you go from being a hero to a zero in the course of a day.
Yeah, and you can't really be bored.
Yeah,
because it's different every day, it changes by the hour. A whole new group of kids come in, and they're all different. Personalities.
Yep.
So. Well,
Dave, I always have and always will have a very soft spot in my heart for teachers. I come from a family with 2 educators in my family. Both my uncle and my aunt both taught in the public school district, and I just think that we don't pay teachers enough, and I think that what they are charged to do is far more than just the subject at hand, that you're really molding people's lives. And so on behalf of us grateful parents, thank you for your incredible years that you put in the school district, and for all of the many music educators that I know are watching this podcast. I know they're giving a big hooray for you as well too, because grateful that you're honorably retired and still serving in ministry. Well, hey, let's talk kind of for the remaining time, because I knew the time would fly by. Some things that Dave Shelton likes to do for fun. Now, Dave, I know you play kind of in a country band a little bit, so a little cover band, and you guys have traveled. You're like big in Europe, right? You're worldwide.
We're famous in Europe. Yeah, I've been playing, this is probably over 20 years now, with a country singer-songwriter that lives locally. He's up in the Palos Verdes area, and met him through a drummer that was in another band that I was in, and he was putting together this guy. He had songs and he played guitar, but he wanted to put together a band and get out there and play. So the drummer was kind of mentoring this whole process and recruiting people to be in it. So he asked me if I could play country music. I said, well, I've listened to a lot of country music. I've never had an opportunity to play it, but my parents had it on a lot. So I said, yeah. He said, do you have a 5-string? I said, no, but I'll go out. I'm never hesitant to go out and buy another bass.
Sure, why not?
So I had a reason to go buy one.
Honey, I got to do it. Sorry.
And the rest is history. I've been with him for about 20 years. And we've, besides playing locally, most of it in LA County, in the Palos Verde area, and Torrance, that kind of thing. But, Vegas, Phoenix, Chicago, Atlanta, Nashville, the Netherlands, France, Germany, Scotland, England. I mean, incredible opportunities I've had just because of that one drummer that we had, and the connection between him and Boomer, who is the singer-songwriter. Yeah. So, it's been fantastic for me, and a great group of guys that we tour with. It wouldn't be fun if you did, because you're living with them for 2 or 3, 4 weeks sometimes. But they're just tremendously fun guys.
That's amazing. And you also touch on something, Dave, that I think is great for our listeners to know about you, and they can kind of superimpose that upon our own lives. Of what God can oftentimes do is take a situation that sometimes it's just a relationship with one person, and you could never have crafted that in a million years, you would have never been able to pick that out of a lineup. It's like God put that plan together, and sometimes it's just so simple that it's just right in front of your face of some relationship, some touch point that all of a sudden can turn into a 20-year business relationship or opportunities to travel the world.
Yeah, I never could have, but I mean, that's what a lot of people dream of,
right?
You know, and to get paid for doing it and have fun and have your lodging and travel and airfare.
Yeah,
and,
eat some good food.
Fish and chips. In France, I didn't know how to order anything, so it was a lot of chicken. So, but the drummer was a believer, and Boomer is a believer, and so, you know. There was that wasn't just happenstance. It wasn't like an accident. That we were all put together in that regard, and so it's just a tremendous opportunity that a lot of people would die to be able to experience. And everybody that picks up a guitar or bass or anything would like to travel and be paid for it. So it's fantastic. And to have a good time doing it.
Yeah.
I would actually do it for free, but don't tell them.
Don't tell anybody. We'll make sure this podcast doesn't get out that far.
No.
No, hey, Dave, just in brief time that we have left, as a retired guy and a musician and someone who's looking across the horizon for the next thing, one fun thing that I noticed that you've just started doing just the last couple of months is working at a cigar shop, local, actually just right around the corner from where Della and I and the kids live right now. And tell us just a little bit, give a little bit of plug if you want to. You can see your constituents right there.
Well, that's another thing. I have a Tuesday night gathering of a bunch of guys. We'll watch a ball game and have cigars. And one of them, one of the ideas that he had, and he's actually attends Kindred, and he was thinking about opening a cigar shop. Well, he and a couple of other friends put together all of the ideas and the money and the plans for this, and then he asked if I would be interested in working part-time. Well, I wasn't looking for a part-time job because I was happy being retired for 10 years and doing whatever I wanted, playing music and being able to pick up and go when I wanted to. So, but that was an opportunity. I thought, well, that's not work. I would do that. So, they opened about 2 months ago, and it is local, and it's brand new. Everything was built from the ground up. So
Plume Cigars in Yorba Linda.
Plume Cigar Lounge in Yorba Linda. So that's
look for Dave.
It's a really fun thing. Yes, ask for Dave.
Ask for Dave. Ask for Dave. Well, Dave, last question, and that is everybody that does an interview with me, they get this coffee cup, this Beyond Sunday coffee cup. So do you have a favorite coffee or tea order?
I like vanilla latte. Either on a cool day, hot, on a
cold
hot
or
day,
hot, I guess, huh?
Blended or iced, either way.
Nice.
I like the vanilla latte.
Nice. I think in all the episodes, maybe what we should do is get a list of all of the guests of their favorite drinks, and I think I ought to probably try every one of them.
You should.
I should.
Yeah.
I should. Well, this wraps up this episode of Beyond Sunday. It's been a joy to have Dave Shelton joining us. You can find us and look at past episodes, and you can find a link from the church's website, which is www.kindredchurch.org, or you can download this podcast through any podcasting app on your iPads or your iPhones. You can find us on our YouTube channel at Kindred Church Anaheim Hills. Find us on our socials at Facebook and on Instagram. My name is Tom Grassi, the host of Beyond Sunday. It's great to have Dave with us, and thank you for watching this episode, and we look forward to seeing you next time. God bless.
Thanks for joining this episode of Beyond Sunday, brought to you by Kindred Church. For updates and new episodes, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Kindred Church Anaheim Hills, or join us on Facebook or on our website at www.kindredchurch.org.